Unemployment has spiked during the pandemic. Stats SA's quarterly labour force survey has shows 2.2 million jobs were lost in the second quarter of 2020. By the third quarter, that figure had jumped very, very sharply to 6.5 million. Now joined by Kristal Duncan-Williams from Youth Capital to talk about some of the solutions. Hello to you, Kristal. Morning. First of all, your reaction to President Ramaphosa's SONA plan to tackle unemployment, particularly what you were listening out for, that being the plan around youth unemployment. What was your takeaway?
Good morning, Gareth. We were disappointed to only hear, I think, about 2 sentences on youth unemployment in SONA. We acknowledge that the President had quite a lot to cover this year, lots of things of concern to South Africa, but youth unemployment is really something that needs to be at the center of an economic recovery plan post-COVID. We know that at the beginning of last year, there were around 8.1 million young people not in education, employment and training, and by Q3 of last year, that number had gone up to 8.8 million. So youth unemployment was in dire straits before, and it's even worse now post-pandemic.
And if you were to give one piece of advice to government or to the President to say, this is the one thing that I, as Kristal Duncan-Williams, think you should do, what do you tell them? Because it's a massive conundrum that government is in. No one foresaw COVID-19. Unemployment was staggeringly bad before, and it's worse now. They can't fix it overnight, surely.
No, absolutely not. And with the numbers in unemployment, there are no easy fixes. Something we are quite positive about, which we were looking out for in SONA, was the economic recovery stimulus package, which was launched in December, and around 300,000 positions have been recruited in teaching assistant roles for young people. And we think these kinds of public works opportunities where young people are recruited to provide a service that is needed in their community, gives them a chance to gain some skills, is a step in the right direction. But we need to make these opportunities work for young people. There needs to be a pipeline from these opportunities into future opportunities, and the government needs to work with the private sector to provide some sort of pipeline for these young people. So these teaching assistant roles should provide on-the-job training, should provide skills that young people can use in other employment, and they should leave these short-term job opportunities with a reference letter and a skill set that they can use to improve their chances of stepping into a next opportunity.
I'm so glad you mentioned the private sector. That's where I was going to go to next. Obviously, we all turn to the President, we all turn to government, because those are the people we hold accountable. We hear from them during the State of the Nation address. Where's the private sector on this, though? Because a lot of what government does is not always effective in filtering down to the small towns, the small cities, the small suburbs. Where's the private sector in this suggestion of yours?
Well, we think there's a few ways the private sector can come on board. One way, which I think they have made clear, is a lot of the time the skills that TVET colleges are producing are not the skills that the economy needs. So that's what you hear from the private sector a lot. I think there needs to be improvement around skills that are needed. How do we get young people qualified quickly? It shouldn't take years. And have young people who have the skills that are needed by the economy. A second one is SMMEs. And I know that the President spoke quite a lot about SMMEs on Thursday, which was great. So I think what we need to unlock existing opportunities for SMMEs to be able to access funding like the employment tax incentive or triple BBE tax rebates around how do they make these incentives work for SMMEs to be able to employ a young person. Imagine a South Africa where every small business was able to employ just one young person. There are tons of small businesses in South Africa. We aren't even sure of the numbers if we take the informal sector into account. So I think this could be a real game changer for youth unemployment. It's just that small businesses aren't always equipped to do this because of the red tape around accessing those types of government incentives.
Kristal, last question to you before I say goodbye. You made a very good point around the skills for the economy. Private sector saying to the TVET colleges and others, this isn't what we need. How do we fix that? How is it possible that there's such a divide between what is needed and what is being provided? How do we get that conversation going?
Well, I think we really need to create space for those conversations and for the TVETs to take an innovative approach. I think a lot of TVETs are under-resourced. The machinery that they have on campus is outdated. It's not relevant anymore. There needs to be an overhaul of the curriculum, really. And I think those conversations need to take place with tech innovators and with the private sector. And I think now is the time. In crisis, there's times to innovate and react quickly. And we've seen the government react very quickly during the pandemic. And so I think there's a moment now to say, how do we take this opportunity and bring the private sector and government and the Department of Higher Education around a table to come up with a curriculum that's concise and relevant for 2021.
A skill set for the economy. I feel that's going to be a very big discussion. I'm so glad you raised that. Kristal Duncan-Williams, thank you as always for speaking to us here on eNCA from a youth capital, SONA reaction really to youth unemployment in South Africa. Skills for the economy, what's happening in TVET colleges versus what's happening in the private sector. Seems to be a bit of a disconnect. Maybe we have that conversation in the coming days.